Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kim. So today I thought I'd try doing something a bit different. So I thought that I would try to vlog reading my TBR Trail picks. So today is the 21st of February and I finished my first TBR Trail read only the other day because I was kind of caught up reading the third book in the Live Ship Traders for Elderling Along, which is called The Ship of Destiny, and it was a 900-page book and I had quite a short time to read it. So yeah, I didn't finish my first TBR Trail read until a few days ago, but the one that I did finish was the one that was free choice, I think it was, and it was read a book with a one-word title, and for that I ended up going with Gemina, which is the second book in the Illuminae files. So Illuminae was the first in the series and then Gemina is the second one. What I found with these two books is that I'm not too bothered about the first parts of the books, and then the end of the books I am hooked and I just want to know what's going on, and it all kind of goes crazy and then becomes really, really enjoyable. And I think what I don't like so much about the start of the book is that, I don't know, the way they write the characters is they kind of write them, they're kind of joking all the time, which does work, but I think it kind of makes a lot of the characters feel very samey. So the characters in this book and the characters in this book, they're all kind of sarcastic and in some way. In a lot of cases, they're like colleagues and they just banter and all the rest of it, whatever. Banter, I'm not sure I like that word. But anyway, yeah, and it kind of has that very light-hearted feel to it. And it kind of happens all the way through, even when some really bad stuff happens, the characters are still laughing and joking. But I think during this book, I kind of realised you just got to take it for what it is. It's a very light-hearted read. It's just a fun book. There's a lot of stuff that happens in both of the books. There's a lot of concepts covered. Spoilers that I can't go into, but there's many different disasters thrown in together. So they're on these ships and then certain things happen. And they're obviously in a closed... Well, this one isn't set on ships, actually. This one is set in another kind of place, but it's still in space. Yeah, and obviously when you're in these confined spaces, so bad things that can happen does happen, and how the characters are dealing with it, and it's all crazy, and it's pretty violent, and lots of people get killed in both of the books. And yeah, but it's kind of fun, and I really liked it. It's basically watching an action movie. It's that kind of, there's some jokes thrown in there. It doesn't take itself too seriously. And I like the way that sometimes when there's victims in either of the books, I've noticed a couple of other author names. So this is written by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. So I feel like they chuck their mates' names in for the people who bad stuff happens to. And that just kind of makes me laugh. And yeah, I'm really excited. There's a third one in the series. Although in all three books you follow different characters, it does link together. So you do have to read them in order. You couldn't read them as standalones, because I initially thought that maybe you could, but you can't. They are linked. So yeah, it's I'm interested to see how it wraps up. I'm looking forward to it. So that was my only fiction book of TBR Trail. So I've actually got 3 non-fiction books left to read. 2 of them are on audio and they're very short, 6 or 7 hours. So I'm going to be reading those this next week, which is the last week in February, because I have been listening to my kind of friends and family book club book, which is The Enchanted April, I think it's called. When I first started listening to it, I was like, what is this? This is not my kind of book. And I just started reading it after I'd finished the Robin Hobb book, which is high fantasy. So to go from that to a book which was written in 1922 was jarring. The Enchanted April, which is written by Elizabeth von Arnim, that follows these women who basically decide on a whim to book a holiday in Italy. So they're women from England, and they decide on a whim to book this holiday to Italy in this castle. And the first few chapters is all them being oh, how could we possibly spend our own money on ourselves? It's so frivolous and all of this. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? Because when I started reading it, I didn't realise it was a classic from 1922. I thought it was written modern day and I was very confused about what was going on. But anyway, yeah, now I'm enjoying it a lot more, but I'll talk about that when I do a wrap up eventually of books that I've read recently. But yeah, what I did start last night was my second physical book for TBR Trail, which is Archimedes' Revenge by Paul Hoffman. So this was written in 1988, so it's pretty old for a kind of book about maths. I have a lot of old books on science and maths on my shelves, and I'm wondering if I should get rid of some, because especially science, it changes so quickly. I don't know if like that science is pretty relevant anymore. I think in a lot of cases, a lot of it will be, but then the more up-to-date information in the book will be very far behind. But this book, even though it's written in 1988, I thought I'd like give it a go anyway, because maths kind of doesn't change as much, maybe. That's probably a very ignorant thing to say. Maybe I just don't know how much it changes. The first chapter, I've nearly finished the first chapter only. But he's talking about perfect numbers. So I think there was like 30 odd perfect numbers or 30 perfect numbers when this book was written, and now they've found like 52. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like it's the same subjects, it's just they've found more of these numbers because computers are faster and have been able to run long enough to compute them, basically. In this book, Paul Hoffman kind of takes like random snippets of maths and mathematical stories that he finds interesting, and he's put them all together. He does talk about the history of mathematics so far as well. So the first chapter, he's talking a lot about the number 666 and kind of where it's written in the Bible and how people used it to manipulate people's names, to turn them into Roman numerals and then to add up them to prove that the number 666 like was attached to them in some way, which obviously meant that they were connected to the devil somehow. Just kind of crazy stuff like that. So he's telling the history of 666, which I find interesting anyway. So I think I'm going to enjoy this. So that's everything for now. I guess I will hopefully catch up with you another time and let you know how I'm getting on. Hey guys, so today is the 25th of February, so it's a few days later, and I'm a bit nervous because my sister has put me on a reserve list for a vaccine, which I could be put on because I've got asthma. But I also have huge health anxiety, so now I'm sitting here like, I could be called at any kind of moment to rush down there, and it's all a bit sudden without having to like prepare or anything. I feel very nervous about it. And also it's this weird thing of like, I want it because I'm really scared of getting COVID, but then equally I'm kind of scared of the vaccine as well. I don't know, health anxiety is awful. And then there's the other side of it where I feel like I'm queue jumping. Because although I suffer with asthma quite badly if I'm not well, that's why I'm really worried about getting COVID. But then equally, I'm sure there's people more in need than I am, maybe, and I don't know, it's just like a really weird thing. But my sister assures me that if I wasn't on the reserve list, or if people weren't on the reserve list, then the vaccines would be dumped. So that's obviously really bad. So hopefully it's fine. Anyway, so that's what I'm waiting for. But in the meantime, I'm trying to distract myself, so I thought I would update my reading. So I've continued with Archimedes' Revenge. I'm not masses of the way through. I'm on page like 76 or something. But I am in the middle of like quite an interesting chapter about cracking codes. I love like that kind of thing. I read the Riddle of the Labyrinth by Margalit last year and loved it. And that was my first kind of learning about deciphering unknown text. And this is kind of about cracking codes, but codes that have been purposefully written as like a code. And he's just been telling us about this collection of letters that have been coded up, where only one of them has been deciphered, and they're called Bill's letters. And it was a really interesting story about this traveller who had like found loads of gold, hidden it, and then the clues are in these 3 coded texts, and how one had only been deciphered, and that was what was hidden, and the other list about who the treasure belonged to, and the other one about where the treasure was, is still to be deciphered. But then he says that it probably is a hoax because there's no like evidence that the guy who actually told the public about this, the person he said made the code, may or may not have existed. There's no evidence of him. There's no evidence of the box that this guy was supposedly left with the letters in with the code. So it sounds all a bit dodgy. But yeah, so that was kind of it's kind of a bit anticlimactic. And like I said before, this was written in the late 1880s, the late 1980s. So I looked it up now, and they still haven't been deciphered. So, and there's lots of evidence to suggest that it has been made up. But then there's also evidence to suggest that these undeciphered 2 letters that are left may actually say something, but whether or not they say about buried treasure is like another thing. it might just be like, haha, losers, you were fooled. But yeah, anyway, either way, it's pretty interesting, and it's kind of made me want to look into it. But if supercomputers can't crack the code, then I'm sure I won't be able to crack the code. But yeah, I've been really enjoying that chapter. So if you're interested, then definitely Google Beale's ciphers. I'll put the text here because I'm probably pronouncing the name wrong. But yeah, it's really, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying that chapter the most so far. Actually, funnily enough, I will say, like, I read the chapter about Archimedes' revenge, and I was pretty underwhelmed. Like, I don't even really remember what it is. It was a collection of like simultaneous equations you kind of had to solve with certain conditions, and that was kind of it, which has been solved by a computer. So I don't know, it's kind of an underwhelming story in my opinion. But so it's funny that they chose that as the one to go on the front. But yeah, it's good. I'm enjoying it. So I've also started reading Hood Feminism as well, listening to it, sorry. So it's written by Mickey Kendall, and it's also narrated by Mickey Kendall as well. And I'm finding that that's good. She's a good narrator. And yeah, so that is about kind of bringing awareness to the fact that mainstream feminism does not address issues that it needs to address in order for things to be better for all females, basically. In the book, Mickey Kendall is mainly talking about it from like an American standpoint. So all the references about American kind of civilization and like anecdotes about America. But I do think it relates, like the subject matter is still meaningful for the UK where I am, and probably for many other places in the world, if not everywhere in the world. Obviously not exactly the same issues, but I think like the basic message of the book is still very valuable. And I just read a chapter on poverty and how Mickey Kendall is kind of just saying, you know, it's all very well us arguing for equal pay for women and getting women in positions of CEOs in big companies, but those are kind of big luxury goals for people who are already very privileged. What about the women who are literally on the breadline of and living kind of hand to mouth and literally starving in a lot of cases? Those issues should be kind of at the forefront of feminism as well. The chapter I just finished as well, Mickey Kendall went into some detail about an abusive relationship she was in, which was quite an emotional read or listen. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I think it's kind of opening my eyes and making me see things in a lot of ways that I haven't properly considered before. I mean, we all know that these problems are there, but viewing them from the standpoint of what feminism is fighting for is important, and not to get too carried away with, you know, the people who already have so many privileges then trying to gain more privilege. Obviously, it is important that women are paid the same as men. That is, to me, that is very important. And women having top jobs, like that men have monopolised all this time, I do think that that is a very important thing. But it can't be the only important thing when we have all these other issues that other people are dealing with. We need to consider everybody, and you can't just fight for one group of women to get to the top. You need to bring all the women up with you. That's basically the message of the book so far, and it's very powerful, I think. There's also talk about, because obviously feminism is fighting for women's rights, is talking about a power dynamic between men and women that exists in the world, in like a patriarchal world or whatever. But then Mickey Kendall talks about, you know, the power difference between white women and black men, and how white women have the power to kind of ruin a black man's life by the way they can, you know, that has been shown in history where people have fabricated things that have happened to them, which has caused a black man to die or be lynched or, you know, caused havoc in their life. There's a power dynamic there as well, and that shouldn't be ignored. So feminism is for everyone. It's not only for women, it's for everyone to have equal rights. So you can't ignore that, you know, all the power dynamics need to be kind of thought about at the same time. It's not just women against men, it's this structure, this weird structure we have where more people are more important and powerful than other people. But yeah, I would just really suggest just picking up the book. It's not a long book, it's about 7 hours or so, less than 7 hours. I've got a few hours left, so yeah, I would recommend picking it up yourself and just having a little listen. But yeah, so the third book that I'm reading at the moment from TBR Trail is Life as a Unicorn by Amru Alcardi. But yeah, so Life as a Unicorn is Amru's memoir. So in the first part of the book, there's a little bit about kind of, I guess, more modern day, where they are in their own drag show at Edinburgh Festival, and about how they do kind of a bit of a comedy sketch within this drag show about Allah and about kind of, I guess, the Muslim religion in general, and how one show there's this group of Muslim women watching and how that made them feel, kind of brought up a lot of stuff from their childhood and feelings from their childhood, and then they skip back and you learn about their childhood growing up, specifically at the moment in Bahrain, and the relationship that they had with their mother when they were very young, like kind of pre-teen age. And they're kind of discussing how they were very close to their mum, and their twin brother was very close to their dad and would go off and watch football, and do all the men kind of activities with the dad, whereas they always wanted to be with their mother. And it's just, I don't know, I'm bracing myself because their mother-child relationship is very touching, and you get the sense that it's going to kind of break apart a little bit when they are discovering things about themselves as a teenager. Maybe, I'm speculating. At the moment, they also narrate it themselves as well, and I'm enjoying that. It's nice to have authors that narrate their own works, because then you know that you're getting stories or getting information exactly how they want you to receive it. So that's really good. But yeah, so I'm only an hour in, but I am enjoying it, and yeah, we'll be continuing with all of those books in the last few days of Feb. So hopefully I'll catch in before I finish all of them. But yeah, I will see you in a bit. Oh, and I'll also be able to update whether or not I got the vaccine, I guess. Hey guys, so today is the something of March. So I've kind of run over a little bit with my reads, but I think that's all right. So I wanted to update you because the other day I finished Life as a Unicorn, and yeah, absolutely loved this. I absolutely loved this book. It was so good. So I listened to it, and Amru narrated it themselves, and I thought it was really nice. I thought it was a really good, I thought they were a really good narrator. So I can recommend that. The book itself, I don't really know how much to say because it's obviously memoirs are so personal. I feel like with this one in particular, or this one especially, I suppose, it's just worth a listen. I think their story as a whole is an important one to hear. So I think the last thing that I said was that Amru was explaining their relationship with their mother as a child, and it was kind of, they had such a lovely relationship with their mother. And then after that section, they went into their experiences at secondary school, and then the fact that they studied really hard and got into Eton, which is a very prestigious school in the UK, which is just, I guess, predominantly rich white boys get into Eton, and a lot of them have become prime ministers and stuff like that. And yeah, so Amru, they studied really hard and managed to get into Eton, and then the experiences there were not how they expected, I guess. And then after Eton, going on to study at Cambridge University and building Denim, which is their drag queen act that they do with their friends, with some of their friends, and then on to just basically kind of growing up and being thrown out into the real world after kind of being in these very strict environments where there were lots of rules to follow and stuff. There were many, many difficult situations that Amru found themselves in with respect to relationships between family members and how they were treated at their school by some of the students, and they had to deal with lots of racism, and they weren't treated very well at all by certain people who they had experiences with in their first kind of sexual relationships and things like that. And it was hard to read at times, just the way that they were treated it's just not, it's awful. Anyway, like I say, I just find it really difficult to explain this memoir without kind of feeling like I'm trying to explain a story that isn't mine. I feel like in this specific case, and especially in this case, it needs to be said from the person's mouth themselves, I think. There is just one thing though that I do want to kind of comment on about this book, and that is Amru's OCD that they suffered with, predominantly as a child. I'm sure there's still aspects of it now, but they spoke a lot about having OCD as a child and studying really, really hard to get things absolutely 100% perfect, and like working through the night and everything like that. I found that part of the book very interesting, just from my own personal experience, because I also suffer with OCD. So I found it was one of the first times really that I've actually read OCD from a perspective that I can kind of understand more, I guess. I feel like Amru's OCD manifests in a fairly similar way to my OCD. So for me, I found it really interesting to read somebody else's experience with it. But yeah, so do highly recommend that. I would listen to it again, to be honest, and I don't think there's many memoirs that I would say that about, but I would definitely listen to that memoir again. Okay, so the next book I finished was Archimedes' Revenge by Paul Hoffman. So I finished this today, and yeah, I really liked it overall. I think I'm going to give it like 3.5 stars, because it didn't completely blow me away, but I did really like all the little mathematical anecdotes in here. I found them fairly interesting. There were a few that lost me because I was getting a bit confused and I didn't really understand, and I tried to, and then I just gave up after a while. And there were some that was a tiny bit boring, but just interesting enough to keep me going. So I gave it 3.5 stars because there was a lot of interesting things in here as well. I think I mentioned this before, but this book came out in 1988, so it's old. I said that like it's old, like 1988 was like hundreds of years ago. It wasn't, but you know what I mean. But it's old, like especially in terms of like computers. And there's this whole section on here. I think it's like, is it section 4? Oh yeah, part 3, and it's called Machines. And I'd say that's like a fairly large chunk of the book is about machines and about computers. I think it was the first chapter in that section as well also had a very detailed description on how the Turing machine works. He went into a fair bit of detail about how that actually works, and he even encourages you to like have a go and try and work out how to like make the machine subtract numbers from one another. So he shows you how to add them up using the machine, and then you had to, I couldn't do it. It was way too difficult for me, which I don't know, maybe if because I haven't been sleeping, so I'm going to blame it on that. But maybe if I have a go now I'm a bit more awake, maybe it'll make a bit more sense. But it's just logic, like it's logical, but you know, sometimes logic doesn't work in your brain very well. Yeah, and that's what I liked about it. I thought it was nice that he was kind of trying to push you to try little mathematical puzzles yourself. But I think one of the main reasons I liked about this is just because it's an older book about, and especially the section about computing, he is like making predictions for the future, and obviously we know the future, and I just liked that. It's kind of like it makes the book seem quirky because, you know, it's already happened and you can look it up and actually see what's going on. So he talks about chess. In the 1990s, that's when a computer first beat like the world champion at chess. But when he was writing this book, that hadn't happened yet. So he's talking about all the people before the people that made the machine who actually beat the world champion at chess. And I don't know if you read, I mean, probably though, if you read a book about the computer that beat the world champion at chess, they probably do talk about all these back people. But I don't know how much detail they'd actually go in about kind of the precursor people, or if they would just focus more on the people who actually made the machine that did it, you know? I don't know how much detail they go into because I haven't really read a book about it. So it's kind of nice to read like an older book written about the history of maths, because then I feel like you're getting stories that maybe there are other stories that might overtake that story now. As long as a book's been researched properly, like obviously no matter how old it is, if it's about history of something, then it's always going to stand up to time, isn't it? So it's not where I was worried about maybe it wouldn't be relevant. I guess the history of something and science and maths is always relevant to like the subject of history of science and maths. I find the whole kind of history of science and maths very, very interesting. So yeah, so that's why I like this book. But yeah, didn't blow me away, but I found it really enjoyable. And I guess if you really like maths, then you'd probably find some interest in it as well. And then the last book that I haven't quite finished yet is Hood Feminism. I'm listening to it still at the moment, and I'm not going to talk about it in this video because I'm reading that one for February's Buzzwordathon. I know that February is gone, but I'm just going to let myself off the hook with it. So anyway, I'm going to be talking more about hood feminism in my Buzzwordathon shorts for the February word. So yeah, I'll talk about that then. So yeah, I'm just going to quickly wrap up, I guess, my TBR Trails reads for February. So these are my 2 physical books, Gemina and Archimedes' Revenge. And yeah, really loved Gemina in the end. Absolutely loved it. Can't wait for book 3 of the Illuminae files. And Archimedes' Revenge was a good one as well. So yeah, happy with that. And then also Life as a Unicorn by Alcardi was one of my favourites of the month. And I'm still reading Hood Feminism. So yeah, I'll be talking to you guys about that soon. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Have any of you guys read any of these books? And if you have, what did you think about them? I'd love to know. Oh, I think I said about in one of these videos about getting the COVID vaccine. So I'll just give an update in case you wanted to know. But I did get the vaccine, but I didn't get it the day that I said I might get it. My doctor referred me instead, so I didn't have to use the standby that my sister got me. I got it on Thursday and today's Sunday. So I was a bit sick for like a couple of days after, and I'm starting to feel better today, so I'm able to film, which is great. But yeah, anyway, that's done. I just thought I'd let you know in case you wanted to know whether or not I got it. I hope that everybody is doing all right and you guys are all keeping as safe as you can. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.